I'm Alara, 29 female. I'm an architectural designer, and for the past 5 years, my life has been a carefully constructed blueprint of love and planning with my fiancé, James. We live in a cozy apartment that we renovated ourselves, a space filled with sunlight, sketches, and the quiet hum of two people building a future. This story isn't about a blueprint that failed. It's about the demolition crew I never saw coming, a crew that happened to be my own family. They tried to tear down the most important day of my life, not with a wrecking ball, but with a single, devastating phone call. They thought my love was a structure they could condemn and repurpose for their own needs. They were wrong. They forgot that I'm the one who knows how to rebuild, and I'm also the one who knows exactly where to place the charges to bring the old, rotten structure down for good. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Every couple has their place. For me and James, it was the Hawthorne estate. We discovered it on a weekend trip 3 years ago, a sprawling manor of old stone and shimmering glass, surrounded by ancient oak trees and gardens that looked like they'd been painted into existence. As an architectural designer, I was captivated by its perfect blend of history and modernity. It was elegant without being pretentious, grand without being cold. That day, standing on its great lawn with the sun warming our faces, James turned to me and said, "When we get married, it has to be here." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, a cornerstone for the future we were designing together. Getting the Hawthorne wasn't easy. It was famously exclusive and booked years in advance, but we were planners. James, a software engineer, is methodical and logical. I live by timelines and budgets. We started a dedicated savings account, labeling it the Hawthorne Fund. For 2 years, we poured every spare dollar into it, cutting back on lavish vacations and extravagant dinners. It was a shared sacrifice that felt more like a joyful investment. When we finally had enough for the deposit, securing our date felt like winning a championship. Saturday, September 20th. It was more than a date on a calendar. It was the culmination of everything we had worked for. The next year was a whirlwind of meticulous organization. I designed our invitations myself, featuring a delicate ink drawing of the estate. James built a wedding website from scratch, complete with a digital RSVP system that our tech-savvy friends loved. We chose our vendors with care, not just for their skill, but for their passion. Our photographer was an artist who captured emotion in light and shadow. Our caterer was a chef who spoke of food like poetry. Our florist was a woman who grew most of her own flowers on a small, local farm. Every detail was a reflection of us, thoughtful, personal, and built on a foundation of genuine connection. My relationship with my own family, however, felt less like a carefully designed structure and more like a house I had long since outgrown, but was still expected to visit on holidays. My parents, Helen and Mark, had a very clear hierarchy in our family, and I was not at the top of it. That position was permanently reserved for my younger brother, Liam. Liam was the creative spirit, the free thinker, which was my parents' polite code for charmingly irresponsible. At 26, he was a freelance graphic designer who seemed to freelance more from his couch than a desk, always chasing a new passion project that required a small investment from mom and dad. They, in turn, showered him with praise and financial support, celebrating his smallest achievements as strokes of genius. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one, the one who got a scholarship, graduated with honors, and built a stable career. My independence wasn't celebrated, it was expected. It was as if my self-sufficiency was a convenience that allowed them to focus all their energy and resources on Liam. When I announced my engagement to James, their reaction was lukewarm. My mother, Helen, a real estate agent who valued curb appeal above all else, immediately asked about the ring's carat size. My father, Mark, a financial advisor, asked how we planned to pay for the wedding, with an undertone that suggested we shouldn't be looking to him for help. We assured them we had it all covered, and a strange look of relief mixed with something I couldn't quite decipher passed between them. Their enthusiasm, or lack thereof, became even more apparent in the months leading up to the wedding. When I showed my mother my wedding dress, a simple, elegant A-line gown I'd fallen in love with, she'd simply said, "It's nice, dear, very practical." When we told them we'd booked the Hawthorne, my father whistled Oli and said, "That place costs a fortune. Big ambitions, Alara." There was no joy, only assessment. Every conversation about my wedding was inevitably rerouted to Liam. "Liam is thinking of proposing to his new girlfriend soon," my mother would say, her voice alight with excitement. "We have to make sure he does it right. It has to be a big splash." Liam's new girlfriend was a girl named Chloe, whom he'd been dating for all of 4 months. She was a social media influencer, and my parents were utterly besotted with her. They spoke of her influential family and her impressive online following as if she were royalty. Suddenly, our family's reputation seemed to hinge on keeping Chloe happy. My wedding became a mere footnote in the grand saga of Liam's love life. "Your wedding will be lovely practice for when Liam and Chloe get married," my mother had said casually over dinner one night. "They'll need something even grander, of course, to impress her family." I just smiled tightly and changed the subject, used to the subtle digs, the constant reminders of my secondary status. James saw it all. He was my anchor, my confidant. "Don't let them get to you," he would say, wrapping his arms around me after a particularly draining phone call with my mother. "This day is about us, no one else." He was right. Our wedding wasn't for them. It was for us, for our friends, for the life we were building. The Hawthorne estate was our sanctuary, the place where we would declare our commitment, surrounded by people who genuinely loved and supported us. As the day drew closer, I pushed the unease about my family aside, focusing on the joy and the final details. The seating charts were finalized, the vows were written, and our bags were packed for our honeymoon. Everything was perfect. It was the calm before a storm I never could have predicted, a storm that was gathering under my own family's roof. The day before the wedding, I checked into a suite at a hotel near the Hawthorne with my maid of honor. James was with his groomsmen across town. We had a tradition, no seeing or speaking to each other after 6 p.m. the night before the wedding. It was old-fashioned, but we loved the idea of the anticipation. My last text to him was simple: "I can't wait to be your wife tomorrow." His reply came instantly: "Tomorrow is the first day of our forever. I love you." I turned off my phone, feeling a profound sense of peace. Everything was in its place. The blueprint was complete. The only thing left to do was to live in it. I fell asleep with a smile on my face, completely unaware that a single phone call was about to turn my perfect blueprint into a pile of rubble. The landline in the hotel room, a phone I hadn't even noticed until it rang, was about to shatter my entire world. The shrill, unfamiliar ring of the hotel landline sliced through the quiet of my room at 10 p.m. My maid of honor, Sarah, was already asleep in the adjoining room. I had been drifting off myself, lost in a happy haze of pre-wedding bliss. Annoyed, I assumed it was the front desk with a misplaced room service order. I fumbled for the receiver in the dark, my voice thick with sleep. "Hello." "Ilara, thank God, I've been trying your cell." It was my mother, Helen. Her voice was tight, strained, and laced with an artificial urgency that immediately put me on edge. My heart started to beat a little faster. "Mom, what's wrong? Is everything okay?" "No, Ilara, it's not okay," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Something's happened, a family emergency. It's very serious." A cold dread washed over me. What kind of emergency? Is it Liam? Is Dad okay? My mind raced through a dozen terrible scenarios, each one more frightening than the last. "Everyone is fine physically," she said, dodging the question. "But this is a major crisis. Listen to me very carefully. You need to cancel the wedding." The words hung in the air, nonsensical and absurd. "What? Cancel the wedding? Mom, what are you talking about? It's tomorrow. Everything is paid for. Everyone is here." "I don't care about that right now," she snapped, the facade of concern cracking to reveal the raw steel of command beneath. "This is more important. Family comes first. You've always understood that. We need you to be a team player on this." A team player? This is my wedding. My voice was rising, a mix of panic and disbelief. You can't just call me the night before and tell me to cancel without giving me a reason. What is going on? I can't get into the details right now, it's too sensitive, she said vaguely. Your father agrees, he's right here. I heard a fumbling sound as the phone was passed. My dad, Mark, came on the line. His voice was supposed to be the reasonable one, the calming one, but tonight it was just a hollow echo of my mother's authority. Ilara, your mother is right. It's a very difficult situation. We wouldn't ask this of you if it wasn't absolute. Really necessary. Dad, please just tell me what's wrong, I begged, tears starting to well in my eyes. Is someone sick? Is someone in trouble? It's a private family matter, he said, using the exact same stonewalling phrase my mother had. We need to present a united front, and that means we can't be at a wedding tomorrow. We need to be handling this. And we can't have the rest of the family celebrating when we're dealing with a crisis. It's just not a good look. Not a good look? The phrase was so jarring, so corporate and cold. It wasn't the language of a family in crisis, it was the language of public relations. The dread in my stomach began to curdle into suspicion. This didn't feel real. It felt rehearsed. So you want me to call all 150 of our guests, our vendors, everyone, and tell them my wedding is off because of a sensitive, private matter you won't even explain to me? I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and anger. Yes, my mother's voice cut back in, having snatched the phone from my father. That's exactly what we need you to do, and you need to do it tonight. We'll handle telling the family on our end. Just start with your friends and the vendors. Call the venue first. The specificity of her instructions was chilling. Call the venue first. Why was that her priority? A piece of the puzzle clicked into my mind, a tiny, sharp-edged fragment of doubt. This wasn't about a crisis. This was about something else entirely. They didn't sound like grieving parents or concerned family members. They sounded like project managers canceling a project that had become inconvenient. Tears were now streaming down my face, silent and hot. The perfect day, the culmination of years of love and planning, was being systematically dismantled by the two people who were supposed to be my biggest supporters. I don't understand, I whispered, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a profound, hollow ache. You don't need to understand, Ilara. You just need to trust us, my mother said, her voice softening now, mistaking my shock for compliance. We love you. We'll make it up to you, I promise. We can have a small ceremony later in the year. It will be just as lovely. The condescension in her tone was the final straw. A small ceremony, as if my wedding was a child's party that could be easily rescheduled. Something inside me snapped. The tears stopped. The trembling ceased. A strange, icy calm settled over me, a clarity so sharp it felt like a shard of glass in my heart. They weren't asking. They were telling. They had already made the decision and were simply informing me of my role in its execution. They had no regard for my feelings, my investment, my love for James. This was a transaction. Okay, I said, my voice eerily flat. There was a surprised silence on the other end of the line. I had expected them to have more arguments prepared, more guilt trips locked and loaded. My quick capitulation seemed to catch them off guard. Okay, my mother repeated, just like that. Yes, I said, the single word feeling heavy and final. You're right, family comes first, I'll take care of it. Oh, Ilara, thank you, she gushed, the relief in her voice sickeningly palpable. You're doing the right thing, you are such a good daughter. We are so proud of you for being so mature about this. Proud of me? The words were poison. I didn't say another word. I just slowly lowered the receiver back into its cradle, cutting off her triumphant praise. The silence that followed was absolute. I stood in the middle of the dark hotel room, the city lights twinkling outside the window, feeling like I was in a vacuum. My wedding was over. My family had destroyed it. The only thing I didn't yet know was why. But as I stood there, a cold, hard certainty began to form in the pit of my stomach. I was going to find out, and then I was going to make them regret it. The blueprint for my wedding was gone, but a new one was beginning to take shape in my mind. It wasn't a plan for a celebration. It was a plan for a reckoning. The first few minutes after hanging up the phone were a blur of numb disbelief. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the luxurious fabric of the duvet feeling coarse and foreign. My wedding dress hung on the back of the door, a ghostly white silhouette in the moonlight. It looked like a costume for a play that had just been canceled. My first instinct was to call James, to shatter his own happy pre-wedding bubble with this ugly, incomprehensible news. But I hesitated. What would I even tell him? My parents want me to cancel our wedding because of a secret emergency they won't explain. It sounded insane. I needed to understand what was happening before I could explain it to the man I was supposed to marry in less than 12 hours. My mind was a chaotic mess, but my architectural training kicked in. When a structure is compromised, you assess the damage before you do anything else. I started with the most painful task. I made a list of the key people to contact, the vendors, my bridesmaids, my closest friends. I decided to start with family to get that part over with. My parents had said they would handle the family, but I didn't trust them. I needed to hear the reactions for myself. Most of my extended family lived out of state and had already traveled in for the wedding. What was I supposed to tell them? I decided to call my Aunt Carol, my dad's sister. We weren't incredibly close, but she had always been kind to me in a way that felt genuine, separate from the suffocating dynamic of my immediate family. She was sensible and down-to-earth. Maybe she knew something. I took a deep breath and dialed her number, my hands shaking. She answered on the second ring, her voice cheerful. "Ilara, sweetheart, I was just thinking about you. Can you believe you're getting married tomorrow? I'm so excited for you." Her words were a gut punch. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to speak. "Aunt Carol," I started, my voice cracking. I have some bad news. The wedding, it's not happening tomorrow." "What?" The cheerfulness vanished from her voice, replaced by alarm. "What do you mean, it's not happening? Is everyone okay? Are you and James all right?" "We're fine," I said, trying to stick to the vague script my parents had handed me. "There's been a sudden family emergency. We have to postpone everything. I'm so sorry you traveled all this way for nothing." There was a pause on the line. I expected sympathy, or at least more questions about my well-being. Instead, what I got was pure confusion. "An emergency?" she asked, her tone bewildered. That's very strange. Your mother just called me an hour ago, and she didn't mention any emergency." My blood ran cold. "Mom called you an hour ago." "Yes, she did," Aunt Carol said, still sounding puzzled. She was giddy with excitement, actually. She was inviting me to Liam's surprise engagement party next Saturday. She said it was all a huge secret, and that Liam was going to propose to Chloe tomorrow. She made me promise not to say a word to you about it, said she wanted to tell you herself. She said the party was going to be at a stunning venue, the Hawthorne no less, and that they had to pull a lot of strings to get it. The world tilted on its axis. Every word she spoke was a hammer blow, shattering the last vestiges of my disbelief and replacing it with a horrifying, crystalline clarity. The Hawthorne, next Saturday. A surprise engagement party for Liam. A secret. My mind replayed my mother's words, "Call the venue first. We'll make it up to you. Family comes first." It wasn't a family emergency. It was a hostile takeover. They hadn't just asked me to cancel my wedding, they had stolen it. They had stolen the venue I had saved for, the date that was supposed to be mine, and planned to hand it all over to my brother like a second-hand gift. "Ilara, are you still there?" Aunt Carol's voice was laced with concern. She had no idea she had just detonated a bomb in my life. "Yes," I managed to choke out, my throat tight. "Yes, I'm here. What else did she say?" "Well, just that it was all very last minute," she continued, oblivious. "She said Liam and Chloe were just so in love, and Chloe's family was putting a bit of pressure on them to make things official, and that your parents wanted to give them the best party imaginable to make a good impression." She sounded so proud. I have to admit, I thought the timing was a little odd, throwing a party the weekend after your wedding was supposed to be, but Helen just laughed and said, "The show must go on." It seemed a bit insensitive, but you know your mother. Oh, I knew my mother. I knew her better in that moment than I ever had before. I saw the whole disgusting scheme laid out in my mind. They had waited until the last possible second, the night before my wedding, to ensure I would be too emotional and overwhelmed to fight back. They manufactured a crisis, banking on my sense of duty and my lifelong conditioning to put the family's needs, which always meant Liam's needs, before my own. They planned to use my grief as a smokescreen while they repurposed my dream for their golden child. The sheer audacity, the cruelty of it was breathtaking. They weren't just thoughtless, they were malicious. "Thank you for telling me, Aunt Carol," I said, my voice now devoid of any emotion. It was as if a switch had been flipped inside me. The hurt was still there, a deep, cavernous wound, but it was being rapidly filled with something else. A cold, hard, unyielding rage. "Of course, honey. Are you sure you're okay? You sound." "I'm fine," I interrupted, my tone leaving no room for argument. "I have to go. I have some calls to make." I hung up the phone before she could reply. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. They no longer looked magical. They looked like a million tiny, cold, indifferent eyes. My family had declared war on me, on my future, on my love for James. They thought I would just roll over, cry for a few weeks, and then quietly accept my place. They thought I would absorb the financial loss, the public humiliation, and the emotional devastation without a fight. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness for the very last time. The party they were planning would indeed go on, but I would be the one writing the guest list, and they would find themselves on the outside, looking in. My shock and grief had burned away, leaving behind the pure, unadulterated fuel of revenge, and I was just getting started. The icy calm that had settled over me was a weapon. It allowed me to think clearly, to push aside the tidal wave of emotion that threatened to drown me and focus on one thing: gathering evidence. Before I could build my counteroffensive, I needed to understand the full scale of their operation. Aunt Carol's slip of the tongue was the crack in the dam, but I needed to know how deep the floodwaters went. The first and most important call was to James. I stepped out onto the hotel balcony, the cool night air a welcome shock to my system. I dialed his number, my heart pounding a steady, furious rhythm against my ribs. He answered immediately. "Ilara, what's wrong? You're not supposed to call," he said, his voice a mix of confusion and concern. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "They want me to cancel the wedding," I said, the words coming out flat and sharp. "What, who, your parents?" He was instantly alert. "Why, what happened?" I recounted the entire conversation, from my mother's manufactured panic to my father's hollow platitudes. Then, I told him what Aunt Carol had revealed. As I spoke, I could feel his silent fury building on the other end of the line. When I finished, there was a long pause. "James." "I'm here," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "I'm getting dressed. I'll be there in 20 minutes. "No," I said firmly. "Stay where you are. We need to be smart about this. We can't let them know that we know. Not yet. Right now, we're in the information-gathering phase." He hesitated, his protective instincts warring with his trust in me. "Okay," he finally conceded. "What's the plan? What do you need me to do?" Finally, a teammate, a partner. The relief was so immense it almost broke through my cold resolve. "We need proof," I said. "Hard proof. This can't just be my word against theirs." And so began our late-night investigation. James, with his software engineering skills, was perfectly suited for the task. We started with the weakest link, Liam's influencer girlfriend, Chloe. While her main social media pages were public, curated feeds of brunch photos and sponsored content, James remembered that she had a private, secondary account she used for her closer circle of friends. One of his junior colleagues happened to be in that circle. A quick, carefully worded text from James, feigning curiosity about the couple, was all it took. Within minutes, we had access. It was a goldmine of treachery. There, posted just hours earlier, was a picture of Chloe showing off. A new diamond ring, not an engagement ring, but a promise ring from Liam. The caption read, "Pre-gaming for the real thing? My amazing future mother-in-law is a literal miracle worker." She managed to get us the most incredible venue for our engagement party next weekend. Can't wait to celebrate with everyone. Best future-in-law's heir apparent upgrade. Upgrade, the word hit me like a physical blow. She saw my wedding as a lesser event, a starter party that they had successfully upgraded from, but there was more. Scrolling further, we found screenshots of group chats. There were messages from my mother, Helen, to Chloe and her friends. One read, "Don't you worry about a thing, sweetie. The venue is a done deal. Ilara is very understanding and always puts family first. She'll be sad for a bit, but she'll get over it. What's important is giving you, and Liam, the celebration you deserve." Another message, sent to my cousins, was even more damning. "Hi everyone. Huge news. We're turning next weekend's family gathering into a surprise engagement party for Liam and Chloe at the Hawthorne. Please don't say anything to Ilara yet. We're breaking the news about her wedding postponement to her tonight, and we want to give her space to process before we share the happy news about Liam." They weren't just stealing my wedding, they were choreographing my grief, planning how to manage my emotions while they celebrated behind my back. They had told the entire family. Every single person who had texted me that day with messages of love and excitement for my wedding knew this was coming. Not one of them had warned me. My uncle, my cousins, people I had grown up with, they were all complicit in this grand deception. The financial piece of the puzzle slotted into place next. I recalled a conversation from a few weeks prior. My father had called me under the guise of offering financial advice. He'd asked unusually specific questions about my vendor contracts. "Are your deposits refundable, Ilara? What are the cancellation clauses? You have to be so careful with these things." At the time, I'd been touched by his apparent concern. Now, I saw it for what it was, reconnaissance. He was probing for weaknesses, calculating the financial damage I would have to absorb. They had likely assumed that since I had paid for everything myself, the loss would be mine alone. They could swoop in, take over the date, and my lost deposits would just be collateral damage. James and I worked through the night, fueled by coffee and a burning sense of injustice. We took screenshots of everything, the posts, the messages, the comments. We created a timeline, documenting who knew what and when. The picture that emerged was of a cold, calculated plot that had been in the works for weeks. My wedding wasn't canceled because of a last-minute decision. It was the victim of a long-conceived conspiracy. By 4 a.m., we had a complete dossier of their deceit. It was all there in black and white. The evidence was irrefutable. Looking at it all laid out, the hurt began to transform into something else. It was no longer just about the betrayal. It was about the profound disrespect. They viewed me not as a daughter or a sister, but as a resource to be managed and, if necessary, sacrificed for Liam's benefit. They had underestimated me my entire life, and they were doing it again. They expected me to crumble. They expected me to mourn the loss of my perfect day. They had no idea that I was already designing a new one. This event would still be at the Hawthorne on that very same date. But the guests of honor would be justice and revenge, and my family would have front-row seats to the demolition of their own making. The sun rose on what was supposed to be my wedding day, casting a pale, indifferent light across the hotel room. The sight of my dress, the flowers that had been delivered the evening before, the carefully packed trousseau, it all felt like artifacts from another person's life. The grief was still there, a heavy stone in my chest, but it was no longer my primary emotion. My mind was sharp, the rage having cooled into a diamond-hard point of focus. James and I had been on a video call for hours, our separate hotel rooms transformed into a war room. We had the motive and the evidence. Now, we needed a plan. "So what's the first move?" James asked, his face a grim mask on my laptop screen. "Do we send the screenshots to everyone? Expose them?" "No," I said instantly. "A public shaming is too quick. It would be messy, and they would twist the story, paint themselves as victims who made a difficult choice for the family. They thrive on drama. We're going to give them silence. They're expecting tears, angry phone calls, pleading. We're going to give them nothing. Their greatest weapon is my emotional response, so I'm going to take it away from them." The core of my plan was simple, elegant, and ruthless. It hinged on one crucial fact: the contract with the Hawthorne estate and all its associated vendors was exclusively in my name. I had signed every document and paid every invoice from my own account. Legally, my parents had no claim to it. They had just assumed I would cancel everything, leaving a vacuum they could easily fill. They had banked on my heartbreak. They had not banked on my pragmatism. My first call was not to cancel, but to adapt. At 9 a.m. sharp, I dialed the number for Sarah, the venue coordinator at the Hawthorne. She was a warm, incredibly competent woman I had developed a great rapport with over the past year. "Ilara, happy wedding day," she answered, her voice bubbling with energy. "We're all so excited for you." "Hi, Sarah," I said, forcing a calm, steady tone. "Listen, there's been a significant, last-minute change of plans due to a private family matter. The wedding is not going forward as planned today." "Oh my goodness, Ilara, I'm so sorry to hear that," she said, her voice immediately filled with genuine concern. "Is everyone okay? What can we do?" "Everyone is fine, thank you for asking," I replied. "But I don't want to cancel the booking, I want to modify it." There was a surprised pause. "Modify it for when?" "Not for when," I said. "For what?" "The booking for next Saturday, the 27th, is still on. But it's no longer a wedding. It's now a private corporate event. It's an annual awards and bonus celebration for my fiancé's company." This was a move James and I had strategized. His tech company, a rapidly growing startup, held an annual celebration for its employees. It was typically a modest affair at a local restaurant. When James pitched the idea to his CEO, that due to a venue cancellation, a prime location had opened up for a fraction of the cost, his boss had jumped at the opportunity. They agreed to cover the remaining costs of the catering and bar, thrilled with the unexpected upgrade. Sarah, the coordinator, was slightly taken aback but incredibly professional. "A corporate event? Okay, we can certainly accommodate that. We'll need to adjust the floor plan and the menu slightly, but it's absolutely doable." "There's one more thing," I said, getting to the most critical part of the plan. "I need to upgrade the security package, the highest level you offer. I want a team at the main gate with a strict, pre-approved guest list. The list will be provided by me 24 hours in advance. If a name is not on that list, they are not to be granted access under any circumstances. No exceptions." "Of course," she said. "We can arrange that. The booking will remain in your name then." "In my name, and my name alone," I confirmed. "All correspondence regarding the event is to come directly and only to me." After ending the call, a profound sense of control washed over me. I had just taken their weapon, my venue, my date, and reforged it into my own. The next step was to disappear. I sent a single, brief email to my parents from a new address. "Per your request, I have handled the situation. I need some time to myself. Please do not contact me." Then I turned off my phone. I sent a short message to my bridesmaids and closest friends, telling them the wedding was off due to personal reasons and that I was safe but needed space. I didn't offer any more details. The information vacuum would drive my family insane. James did the same. We packed our bags, checked out of our respective hotels, and drove 3 hours north to a secluded cabin by a lake that we rented for the week. The moment we arrived, the city, the drama, and the betrayal felt a million miles away. There, surrounded by pine trees and the quiet lapping of water, we grieved for the wedding we lost. But we also celebrated the marriage we were building. On Tuesday, we drove to the local county courthouse. I wore a simple white sundress I had packed, and James wore a linen shirt. We found our 2 witnesses at a nearby diner, an elderly couple who had been married for 50 years. The woman, Mabel, insisted on loaning me a small blue handkerchief for luck. The ceremony was short, simple, and witnessed by strangers who showed us more kindness than my own family had. As James slid the simple gold band onto my finger, I wasn't thinking about the Hawthorne or the party or the revenge. I was thinking that this felt more real, more intimate and profound than any grand celebration ever could. We were married. We were a team. We were a family. For the rest of the week, we hiked, we swam, we talked for hours, and we planned our future. We were not victims licking our wounds. We were partners solidifying our foundation. My parents' plan had been to isolate me, to make me feel small and powerless. Instead, they had pushed me closer to James and shown me my own strength. They assumed my silence was the sound of my defeat. They had no idea it was the sound of me reloading. While they were busy sending out invitations and basking in their perceived victory, I was getting married, finalizing a guest list, and preparing for a party they would never forget. The evening of Saturday, September 27th, was perfect. A crisp, early autumn breeze rustled the leaves of the great oaks at the Hawthorne estate, and the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant strokes of orange and purple. The manor was aglow, lanterns lining the long, winding driveway, music drifting faintly from the grand ballroom. From the outside, it looked exactly like the dream wedding I had planned. But dreams and nightmares can often look alike at a distance. James and I arrived early, not as a bride and groom, but as hosts. I wore a sleek, sophisticated emerald green cocktail dress, and James was in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. We were a power couple, not a heartbroken one. We met with Michael, the head of the private security team I had hired. He was an imposing, no-nonsense man who came highly recommended. I handed him the finalized guest list on a tablet. "The instructions are simple," I said, my voice steady. "Only the names on this list are permitted on the property. No exceptions, no excuses, no sob stories. Anyone who claims there's a mistake or tries to argue is to be told that the private event is proceeding as planned and they are to leave the premises. You and your team have my full authority to handle any disruptions." Michael nodded, his expression unreadable. "Understood, ma'am. We'll secure the gate." We walked into the ballroom, which had been transformed. The romantic floral centerpieces were replaced with chic, modern arrangements. The dance floor was set for a party, not a first dance. James's colleagues from his company, about 100 people in total, were starting to arrive. They were laughing, grabbing drinks, and marveling at the stunning venue, completely unaware of the drama that had made the evening possible. To them, it was just an incredibly generous corporate party. To me, it was the stage for the final act. At 7:30 p.m., just as the party was getting into full swing, Michael's voice crackled through the discreet earpiece I was wearing. "Ma'am, we have a party of 4 arriving at the gate. A Helen and Mark, a Liam, and a Chloe. They are not on the list." My heart gave a single, hard thump. "As expected, Michael. Proceed as instructed." I made my way to a second-floor balcony that overlooked the main gate, a perfect vantage point. James joined me, his hand finding mine. Below, a luxury sedan had pulled up. My parents, my brother, and his fiancée stepped out, dressed to the nines. My mother was in a gaudy, sequined mother-of-the-bride dress. Chloe looked like she was heading to the Oscars. They approached the security checkpoint with an air of ownership, ready to play the gracious hosts. I watched as my mother gave her name to the guard. He checked his tablet, his face impassive. "I'm sorry, you're not on the guest list for the private corporate event being held here tonight." My mother let out a tinkling, condescending laugh. "Oh, you must be mistaken. A corporate event? That's funny. No, this is the Hawthorne. We're here for Liam and Chloe's engagement party. I'm Helen, the mother of the future groom." She gestured grandly as if her title alone should be enough to part the gates. The guard didn't even blink. "The booking is under the name AITA for a corporate function for Omni Tech Solutions. Only guests on this approved list are permitted entry." The smile on my mother's face froze, then melted away into a mask of confusion. "AITA? No, that can't be right. There's been a terrible mistake. She canceled her booking. Let me speak to your manager." "I am the head of security," Michael said, stepping forward. "And there is no mistake. The event is proceeding as booked. If you are not on the list, you will have to leave." Panic began to set in on their faces. Liam, ever the entitled child, stepped forward puffed up with indignation. "Do you know who we are? My parents arranged this whole thing." More cars were beginning to pull up behind them, a line of my relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, all dressed in their party best. A bottleneck of confused and elegantly dressed people was forming at the gate. The scene was quickly devolving into an embarrassing spectacle. My mother frantically tried to call me, her face growing more furious with each unanswered ring. That was our cue. James and I descended the stairs and walked out the main entrance of the manor, strolling calmly down the stone path toward the gate. The murmur of the confused crowd died down as they saw us. A wave of shock rippled through them. All eyes were on us. I was no longer the sad, compliant daughter. I was the architect of their humiliation. "Looking for something?" I asked, my voice carrying easily in the stunned silence. My mother's head snapped towards me. Her face, a mess of confusion and rage, was a sight to behold. "Ilara, what is the meaning of this? What have you done? You've ruined everything," she shrieked, her carefully constructed composure shattering completely. I stopped a few feet from them, just on the other side of the security line. I held up my left hand, letting the simple gold band on my finger catch the light from the lanterns. "I haven't ruined anything," I said, my voice calm and clear. "My husband and I are just hosting a party for his company. You wanted a celebration at the Hawthorne on this date? Well, Omni Tech Solutions is having a wonderful one. We're celebrating a year of hard work and record profits. We're so sorry you couldn't make the guest list." My father finally found his voice, sputtering, "But the wedding was canceled. You said you understood." "Oh, I understood perfectly," I replied, looking him directly in the eye. "I understood that you thought you could throw me away like garbage and repurpose my life for your own social climbing. You demanded I cancel my wedding because family comes first. You were right, my family does come first." I squeezed James's hand. "This is my family now, and our family doesn't betray each other." Chloe stared at me, her mouth agape, her influencer-perfect makeup doing nothing to hide her shock. Liam just looked like a lost little boy, turning to his parents as if expecting them to fix it. But they were powerless. They had no control here. The contract was in my name. The security team answered to me. The party was mine. "You can all leave now," I said, my voice leaving no room for negotiation. "Or you can stay and explain to all these people you invited why you're not allowed into your own son's engagement party." I turned my back on them then, a final, definitive act. James and I walked back toward the manor, the sounds of my mother's sputtering rage and the car horns of the backed-up guests fading behind us. As we reached the grand doors, I glanced back one last time. I saw my family standing there, a pathetic, overdressed tableau of thwarted ambition, shut out of the life they had tried so hard to hijack. The security gate closed with a quiet, final click. The show was over. And they had been left out in the cold. Walking back into the party felt like stepping into a different dimension. Inside, there was warmth, laughter, and genuine celebration. James's colleagues were dancing, enjoying the gourmet food, and celebrating their professional successes. They were good people, people who had earned their place at this beautiful estate through hard work and mutual respect. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt for using their celebration as the backdrop for my personal drama. But then James's CEO, a kind man named David, came over and clapped him on the shoulder. "James, Ilara, this is incredible," he beamed. "Ed, best company party we've ever had. We can't thank you enough for making this happen." He raised his glass. "And congratulations again on your marriage. We were all so thrilled to hear your news." James had told his boss the truth, or at least a corporate-friendly version of it, that our original wedding plans had fallen through due to a family dispute, and we decided to elope and offer the venue to the company instead of losing our deposits. The company had been more than happy to step in, and the employees, hearing we'd just gotten married, treated us like guests of honor at our own reception. They toasted us, they cheered for us, and they made us feel more celebrated in that one night than my own family had in my entire lifetime. It wasn't the wedding I had originally planned, but it was a perfect, joyful celebration of our new beginning, surrounded by a community that valued us. The fallout from the party that wasn't was immediate and seismic. As we later found out from Aunt Carol, who had wisely decided not to attend after our phone call, the scene at the gate had been one of epic humiliation. My parents, unable to get in and unwilling to admit defeat, had tried to argue and bluster their way past security for nearly an hour. The entire guest list they had invited bore witness to their powerlessness. Eventually, they were threatened with trespassing and forced to leave, a caravan of shame retreating from the gates of the Hawthorne. My phone, which I had turned back on after midnight, was a wasteland of digital rage. There were dozens of missed calls and a flood of text messages. My mother's messages started as furious demands, then devolved into unhinged accusations, and finally ended in pathetic, self-pitying tirades about how I had embarrassed her. My father's were shorter, filled with disappointment and declarations that I was no longer his daughter. Liam's was a single, petulant message: "You ruined my life." I read them all, one by one, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a quiet finality. I replied to none of them. Instead, I simply blocked their numbers. Helen, Mark, Liam. One by one, they vanished from my digital life. The consequences for them were far-reaching. The story of their failed party spread like wildfire through our extended family and their social circles. They had invited everyone to a lavish party they couldn't even get into. They were a laughingstock. The financial hit was also significant. They had apparently gone all out for Liam's surprise party, ordering a custom multi-tiered cake, hiring a popular DJ, and putting down deposits on extravagant floral arrangements, all of which were non-refundable. They had been so certain of their victory that they hadn't considered the possibility of defeat. The biggest casualty, however, was Liam and Chloe's relationship. Her influential family, who had also been turned away at the gate, were mortified by the public fiasco. The image of wealth and power my parents had tried so desperately to project was shattered. Chloe, whose entire life was based on maintaining a perfect image, couldn't handle the humiliation. She broke up with Liam less than a month later, and we heard through the grapevine that she was already engaged to someone else by Christmas. In the year that followed, our lives moved on. James and I used the money we had saved for our honeymoon to put a down payment on a house, a beautiful mid-century modern that we are slowly renovating together, a real home built on a foundation of love and trust. My career flourished. I was promoted to lead architect on a major city project, a testament to my skill and hard work. My relationship with the rest of my family fractured and reformed. Aunt Carol became a closer confidant. A few of my cousins reached out, sheepishly at first, to apologize for their complicity and to express their shock at my parents' actions. I cautiously let them back into my life, establishing new boundaries built on honesty rather than obligation. The rest of them sided with my parents, and I let them go without a fight. I sometimes wonder what my parents and brother think now. Do they feel any remorse? Do they understand the depth of what they did? I honestly don't know, and I've realized that I don't need to. Their validation is no longer a currency I trade in. I learned a hard lesson that night. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, trust, and unconditional love. It's about who shows up for you, not just in the good times, but when everything falls apart. My parents called me and told me to cancel because family comes first. They were right. I just had to redefine my family. And in the end, I chose the one that chose me back. And I have never, for 1 second, regretted it.